Know that last week I missed our weekly appointment, and I do apologize, but I was on holiday. So unfortunately, I was not able to come to you directly with a guest as I have today. So, as you saw today, we have with us Claudine Kohl in arts. Her brand is Annie. Yeah? And Claudine is a textile designer and a textile designer inspired by nature. So we know a lot that nature inspires us a lot. There are a lot of fractals that help us create designs and things to that extent. But Annie has also comes from St. Martin's, so all the English people know exactly what it is. But Annie was also in the past a creative coach for the Cirque du Soleil. Now, I believe a lot of you know what the Cirque du Soleil is, and it is obviously the top of creativity. So I am really delighted to have you with us today, Claudine. So welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, so today we're, fresh out of our holidays.
Exactly. We needed that so much. I know some people are still going on holiday. Um, I just came back and I wrote quite about it because, as you know, I was in this heat wave.
Yes.
But I am pleased to be back with everyone today, and I would like to pass the word directly to you because I am very curious, and as are our listeners, is your journey. How did you get to do textile design? How did you find inspiration from nature? And what is your process?
um, Textile design came to me as a surprise. I knew nothing about it, and I love to draw and paint right from my childhood, and do that and create worlds, drawing worlds. But by nature I was more into movement and dancing and performing and acting and things like that. So that's what I trained, and where I started. I performed on stage, and I joined cirque, and then after that I had some sort of identity crisis. What shall I do? What can be as creative, and where do I find a new expression? um, mm, so I thought, why don't I start, or why don't I study painting, or fine arts, or whatever? And I applied at St. Martin's, and then I applied for painting and drawing for textile design or something, not giving it a second thought. I thought it doesn't really matter, if you draw on a canvas, or and then we had our first session and everything, and I got hooked because I thought, this is fantastic. There's so many more choices than just painting on a canvas,
Uh-huh.
and that's how I got started. And also to create patterns, and to create like textiles that are endless and can be used, and art people can live in and with, and use in their daily life. um that's a new world open, and that's how I got into textile design.
That's fantastic. You know that where we live here near Como, there's obviously a very big textile district,
Yes.
silk district, and I know textile designers are the key to the industry because they, at the end of the day, it is that which can make or break a collection or even a home for the interiors. So, so I wanted to ask. So that's how you got into textile design, okay? But then, what? how did you find the connection with nature to develop these patterns? Was it something, because you could be abstract, or, you tell me your journey.
Well, we had, also to come up with abstract patterns and things like that. But you're free to choose. You're free to choose your motives, your mood board, your things you want to draw. And I fell in love with drawing, nature and animals and flowers and plants and things like that, and create some sort of like little paradises, and just because I liked it. And then I realized, once you start with a pattern and a motive, and then you bring the motives together and you create a pattern. And I also um, I'm very interested in the history of textile design, because it's an ancient art. It goes back to 10,000 before Christ, So it's like a really before it was like a language by itself, and the patterns and nature patterns used back then in the designs were a language. They were healing codes. They had a lot of meaning, like the magic carpets. They were people were talking about, and you find, in a lot of stories of the past. They were real because they were not meant to fly, but the meaning and the patterns and the nature patterns on those carpets were designed to energize the person sitting on the carpet, and to allow them to dream about a different world, a paradise, whatever, and I went to Waldorf school, and 12 years of tracing nature's patterns, of learning about the archetypes and patterns in nature, the 5-star, the Vitruvian man, the Fibonacci spiral, the flower of life, and things like that. And I began to realize that this is an opportunity, and that it's important that we really look for patterns and textiles and surfaces that are based on this natural patterns and rhythms and connections, because they energize us, they reconnect us with ourselves, they harmonize the patterns within us, even if it's just a breathing pattern, and all patterns within us are connected. So it creates worlds, and it harmonizes us within, and it harmonizes the world around us. And patterns that are not based on natural patterns, really, there are studies about it, really, like the technical patterns can really kill your immune system, can really make you depressed, can really, draw you away from your natural state of harmony. So
Okay, so replicating patterns which we find in nature, and does in fact allow us to heal, should I say, to feel more balanced, rather than pushing patterns beyond our natural inclination. Because we know that our natural inclination is towards nature, and we are
yes,
attracted by these patterns because they comfort us.
and
So
we have them
repeat
in
it.
our bodies and cells and everywhere. We
Okay.
we are a pattern.
We are a pattern, absolutely. And but do you study them? Do you go out and you think, I want to study the spirals? So, for example, you said the spirals. I remember the spirals in the Waldorf school. Or do you just let yourself be freely inspired and then it comes?
Both.
Both.
I have, well, I see so many things and then I go like, oh, this is a good idea, and I'll just draw this, or something develops. Sometimes it's just a big mess and nothing develops, but I see something or I have an idea and I work on it, and then while I'm working on it, the pattern emerges and I can see what I'm at. It's like a natural thing that just happens. I don't have to force it. But of course, when people ask me for a design or something, then I really decide sometimes and go, okay, this time it's just about spirals, or flowers and spirals, or it really depends on what I'd like to create. I have like my creative sessions every day, and I improvise, but I do go and study patterns. I also study like a Gaudi and his architecture and the patterns he uses, and all those spirals and things and stars and whatever he uses. And yes, I do study, and yes, I look for them, and yes, I sometimes choose a certain, sometimes you're asked to design a pattern for a hospital or whatever, and for a wall or something. And I don't just want to put flowers there. I think then I want to create like a healing mandala or whatever. So yes, I do
Okay.
research, and yes, yes,
It
yes.
depends on where what's the final use, I presume. Okay.
Yeah, and how the process began, and if it's just an, or if it's something that I think, okay, this is interesting. I'm at this church and this is interesting. They've got this pattern, and I go
Hmm.
further into studying a new pattern I just discovered.
Okay. So listen, and I wanted to ask you for, because obviously textile can cover a lot of things. So
Yeah.
it can be fashion, it can be a brand, and so what do you prefer personally in terms of where you develop for what is the final use of your pattern for you personally, and how do you work with corporates, and what do they call you for?
Okay, well, it's a long question.
It is. It's two questions, in fact. So I'll just let you roll.
um, um, I'm the, my I, I've been called or famous at St. Martin's for being the cushion lady, because I thought you can turn everything into a cushion and it's just great.
Okay.
Um, so I still, they're just my favorite items. I think, I don't know, I have hundreds of cushions at my home, and also in my shop. It's just my favorite thing to do. But I love interior because it stays a little longer usually, because people live in it, and more they're more thinking about what they want to bring into their home, and it's a more intense process. And and decoration and all the things they add. I find this whole process very interesting. But I also like fashion, and I also like to cooperate with fashion designers and see, I design a textile, and then they shape it into something completely new, and I think, well, I never would have seen this in that pattern or used it in that way, and it's surprising, and I really like that, because I'm not a fashion designer, and then to see what they make out of it, and how when the textile moves and things like that, and how it relates to the body and things like that. I find that really interesting. But I'd say if I'd have to choose, I'd probably go into, interior and things like that. And what was
The second question is the difference between when you have to design for your own collections, because I
ah
know you do a lot
yeah,
of, as you said, the cushion lady,
yeah.
and then obviously wallpaper and textiles for the home, and as opposed to your when you have to design for corporate. I mean, what do they ask you for? Is it a fashion industry, or is it an interior design industry who's going to, or is it a brand?
Uh, all of it. Um, for interior, I mostly work with interior designers or fabric makers, and they come up with an idea of a color palette they'd like to have in their collection for the next year, or they have a new way of printing, or they have usually I seem to attract partners that want to create something new, and then they somehow find me, and then they approach me, and then we develop a collection together. It's usually a collection. It's most of the time it's not just one pattern. It's a whole story, a whole collection, a whole, different color palettes, different stories, uses, printed, woven, stitched textiles. It can be anything, which is really, interesting, but it also takes a lot of time because you have to, talk a lot, and communicate a lot and test a lot. um, and for fashion it's different because sometimes um, the designers or their whatever approach me, and then they are looking for a certain pattern, or they want me to design a certain something or a floral pattern for whatever, or they have a collection, or they have already
So they're
bought.
more specific. They're more specific.
Yeah,
Whilst with
yeah, that's the point. They're more specific, and the other way around. It's more creative, and it's up to me most of the times, to come up with an idea, and to you know
So I wanted to ask you. You said something which was quite interesting. I find that when you create your patterns and your series of patterns, so your collection, should I say, using patterns which are inspired by nature, you are talking about a story. So is this your story with the origin of this pattern? So I am thinking your story with the spirals, which can be the shells, and
yes.
so how you see it, or what is the story? I mean, how does it start? Is it the story first and then the patterns, or the other way around?
At the moment, I'm working at a collection. It's called Artemis. So it's based around the goddess Artemis and what she stood for in her connection to nature. So then, I find whatever, I find shells, and I think, oh, this would, match to this Artemis theme or whatever. But the story is about Artemis, and it's not so much. There's like a bigger story about the whole thing that emerges while I'm working on it, and the ideas keep coming, um, and sometimes it really is that a pattern, or the 5 star, like it really speaks to me, and then it's the story of this pattern that I'm trying to tell. And it's really different. I think it's different. So I usually start with a mood board or a sketch or something, and it really depends on this very first initiate moment. If if the story will evolve into a story about, a whole whatever, or if it's just the things within the story that I'm trying to tell and to transform into or put into a different environment, or have fun with, like characters you'd have. They're like little characters and they develop. So it can be both. It can be both.
So can I say that is kind of natural patterns which kind of develop into patterns, to patterns which develop into characters
It's a network. It's a network of patterns, and then
and
they develop
characters and
and they
story.
start telling stories like songs or whatever. They
Uh,
start telling stories and they start talking to you, and you work with them, and then you throw something out because you think that's not the way it's gonna work, and then 2 days later you bring it back in because you think, oh no, that's the main part of the story or whatever. It's really like working with as if they were real,
mm. So the next question I wanted to ask for anyone who's listening to us, who may be intrigued by this, and maybe they have something which they would like to develop, but they don't know themselves. So apart from working for obviously big companies who develop big patterns, if I am not mistaken, you also do flat patterns, so bespoke pattern for single projects. So
Yes.
can you tell us how that works? So if someone's interested in having a pattern developed for a specific project, what should they do? I mean, how does it work?
It's very simple. They just have to reach out to me, send me an email. There is tons of
No, but in
opportunities.
terms of production, I mean, clearly they'll have to reach out to you, but
Yes.
I can't produce, hundreds of yards.
No,
Just to
usually,
do one
it's people that, want to redo their apartment, or, that are doing their own fashion or whatever, and they just want a small to order a small charge of textiles or whatever, and then we agree on I design the pattern and I sell the pattern to them, and then
Mhm.
they can use the pattern and print the pattern. This is one option, so that they just pay for the pattern and then they have a printer or whatever, and they can use and repeat it as many times as they want to, as long as they're not using it commercially, because that would be a different, order. Or the other way is that they say, well, I need like I don't know, curtains, and I need this and that length and this and that amount, and then I will design especially for their home or for their dress, or they can send me a dress and I'll paint something on it, a pattern on it. So it's there's thousands of options, but usually if you just need a small amount, most of the times people just tell me what they need and what size, and if it's just cushions or a sofa cover or a blanket or whatever, and I print and paint myself, and
So
yeah.
you can supervise the production of it. That's what I'm saying. I want the curtains in I don't know, Australia. Okay, I want the curtains of a certain size. You design it and you print it on the material, and then you send it out.
Yes.
So you can manage also the single production. That's what I wanted to
As long as
understand.
it's in small amounts, yes,
Okay.
yes. So then
Okay.
it's hand printed or hand painted, and then I do it myself. Yes,
In
and
alternatively, if they want to follow the production themselves, they buy the pattern from you and they produce, but only for their own personal use. Because if it's for commercial purposes, that's something quite different.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay,
so
I just
you
wanted
put
to clear up how
so
things
if
can work.
you have a sofa you really like and you think you cannot find a cushion that matches, that sofa, and you have an idea of colors or motives or whatever you'd like to have, then you could reach out to me and say, okay, I need like 3 or 4 cushions for that sofa. Could you, make those cushions? Could you design a motive or whatever? And That's how it
Okay.
works.
Okay.
It's very simple.
Very straightforward, yes.
Yes.
And as you said, you are usually inspired by nature, but not only, I believe, but nature does have natural patterns, so it obviously replicates. Well, would you like to add anything else which you think is curious that the people, our audiences, would like to know about your process of getting closer to nature to design these patterns? And what is your favorite pattern?
A spiral.
And the style.
um, I think what people could really, you know, or I think what's really important, because so many people confuse textile design with fashion design or interior design, and I think that to bring into your own awareness, what patterns you like, and how, have a look. Do you find a natural pattern within, you can do research, or you see, okay, well, actually I like roses, but all the roses are arranged in a spiraling whatever motif, or pattern or whatever, and I'm always drawn to this, and it feels great, to me, to really begin to look in your apartment and everywhere you go and things you're attracted to see what's the underlying natural pattern that attracts me within this, design pattern, color combination, whatever, to really also, connected to your well-being, and to understand what your body, what your, mind, what your spirit needs, and feels good in, because sometimes we just, go to the shop and think, I need a cushion, I'll just take this one, it's really nice, and then I'll drop it on the sofa, so finally I've got a cushion. But there's so much, energy, and so much things we could, so many things we could profit from. And I think to really become aware of what feels good to you is something I'd really like people to encourage to do,
Mhm. Perfect. Yes, I think that's you've got it spot on, because the patterns at the end of the day is a matter of finding your balance within. So some people are more attracted to one kind of pattern rather than another kind of pattern, and that makes a difference. Okay, well, thank you, Claudine. I would first of all like to thank you for the time you gave us today,
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
and the explanation you gave us about, how patterns come into being into our lives and why they are important. So, for anyone looking, I have included in the text of the video also how to get hold of you, so your website, and I presume people can go on your website and contact you through there.
Yeah.
So that's it for today. Well, thank you very much, Claudine.
Well, thank you, and I hope, we'll come up with you know more of your Mondays, material Mondays, because I think that that's part of the story. Like I said, I'd like people to know what patterns feel good to them. It's also to know what materials you want, to have around you and use.
Yeah, yeah. It's very personal, as you said. Every person is different, so we've got to tap into our inner self to understand really what emotions provoke.
Yeah, and our uniqueness, we whatever, furniture or whatever we buy is a mirror of our own unique design,
Yeah,
so we need to honor that, and I think you're doing a great job on bringing that out into the world.
perfect. Thank you so much, Claudine.
So thank you.
Bye.
Bye.